You fell asleep in front of the television. Again. It was late Friday night or early Saturday morning. You weren't entirely sure which. The rain had started around 11, and you remembered thinking you should get up and close the window, but the warmth of the room pulled you under, and the television became your lullaby. The program playing was ordinary and forgettable. Some late-night talk show, a comedian telling jokes you'd heard before, a host laughing too loudly. Nothing important, nothing memorable. You drifted off. The rain continued, soft, persistent, a rhythm against the glass that felt almost like breathing. Then suddenly you woke up, or at least you thought you did. The room was the same, the rain continued, but something had changed. The television was still on, but the broadcast had changed. There was no studio, no desk, no host, no title card, no introduction. A woman sat alone in a chair. She was framed in the center of the screen, surrounded by darkness. The image felt strangely old, not black and white, but not quite modern either. The colors were muted and faded. There was a soft grain to the picture, like film stock from decades ago. The quality felt like a transmission from somewhere else, somewhere far away, somewhere that might not exist anymore. The woman looked directly into the camera, directly at you. She did not blink. Her voice was calm and clear, completely at ease. "If a blue envelope arrives for you," she said, "don't open it." She paused and held your gaze. "Don't open it." The television flickered. The screen dissolved into snow and static. The analog hiss became unbearable for just a moment. Then normal programming resumed. The late-night host was still telling jokes. The audience was still laughing. Everything was exactly as it was. You were no longer sure whether it had happened at all. The next morning you woke up on the couch. The television was off. The rain had stopped. Everything looked ordinary. You sat up slowly. Your neck was stiff from sleeping at an awkward angle. The room was filled with pale gray morning light. The world felt quiet and gentle, completely unremarkable. You remembered the woman. You remembered what she said. You looked at the television. It was just a television, dark, silent, unremarkable. You searched the television listings for the night before. Nothing. You searched online for any mention of a strange broadcast. Nothing. No one on social media was talking about it. No news articles, no forums, no Reddit threads, no evidence at all that the transmission ever existed. You told yourself it was a dream. A strange dream, but just a dream. The kind of dream that feels real in the moment, but fades quickly. You went about your day. Life moved on. But the memory remained. In the days that followed, you found yourself thinking about the woman. Not constantly, not obsessively, but more than you expected. Her face became difficult to forget. Not because she was beautiful, though she was in an understated, almost haunting way, because she seemed to know you. There was something in her eyes, a recognition, a familiarity that felt personal and intimate, like she had been waiting for you to appear, like she knew you were going to be watching. Over the following weeks, strange things began happening. Small things, minor things, the kind of things that were easy to dismiss as coincidence, but they accumulated. You noticed a blue matchbook on the counter at the corner store, a shade of blue that stopped you cold. You didn't smoke, but you picked it up anyway. The logo was for a diner you'd never heard of. You put it back. A few days later, you saw a blue umbrella abandoned in the gutter outside your apartment, the exact shade of blue. You walked past it. You didn't stop. A blue neon sign outside a diner you'd never noticed before. You passed it on your way home from work. The sign flickered slightly. The blue light reflected on the wet pavement. You thought about going inside. You didn't. A blue VHS case in the window of a thrift store. You didn't own a VCR. You hadn't owned one in years. But you stopped to look. The case had no label, no description, just the color blue. You stood there for a long moment. Then you walked away. One night, you heard something on an old radio. Someone tuning through static. A voice crackled through, barely audible. "If a blue envelope arrives for you," it said. The voice disappeared. The radio went silent. You weren't sure you had heard it. You weren't sure you had heard anything. But you turned off the radio and didn't turn it back on. You began to wonder what kind of message could be so important that you shouldn't open it, and who would send it, and how they would know your name. One night, you found yourself at a diner you'd never been to before. The drive felt strangely absent, as if part of the evening had slipped through your fingers. You couldn't recall deciding to go there, couldn't recall the journey, but you were sitting in a booth, a cup of coffee growing cold in front of you, and the jukebox was playing something old and sad. The waitress brought you a plate of food you hadn't ordered. You ate it anyway. It tasted familiar, like something from childhood, something you'd forgotten. You left the diner. You drove home. Later, you would struggle to remember the drive. Several weeks later, on a rainy evening, you found yourself in a coffee shop you'd never been to before. You didn't remember deciding to go inside. You were walking home. The rain started coming down harder, and somehow you found yourself pushing through the door. The place felt strangely timeless. Modern phones sat on tables beside decor that felt decades old. The counter was vintage, perhaps from the 1940s. The lighting was soft and warm. The windows were streaked with rain, the neon sign outside casting a faint blue glow through the glass. The coffee shop was nearly empty. A couple sat in the corner, speaking in whispers. A man read a newspaper, an actual printed newspaper which you hadn't seen in years. And then you noticed a woman sitting alone. Something about her stopped you cold. It was her, the woman from the transmission. She was sitting at a table near the window, a cup of coffee in front of her. She wasn't looking at you. She was looking out at the rain, her expression calm and peaceful. She appeared completely ordinary. Nothing remarkable about her clothing, nothing strange about her demeanor. She was just a woman, sitting alone, drinking coffee, watching the rain. But you recognized her immediately. The same face, the same stillness, the same sense that she knew something you didn't. She turned her head. She looked at you. She smiled. Not a big smile, not a surprised smile. A calm, knowing smile, as if she had been expecting you. She gestured to the seat across from her. One moment you were standing across the room, the next you were sitting across from her. She didn't speak, she just looked at you. You asked if you'd met before. No, she said, but you've seen me. You mentioned the television, the transmission, the static, the broadcast, the message. She didn't flinch. She didn't look surprised. She just listened. Then she changed the subject. Her voice was calm and warm. She spoke with a subtle intimacy, as if she was speaking to someone she'd known for years. "How was the diner?" she asked. You froze. You hadn't told her about the diner. You hadn't told anyone about the diner. She took a sip of her coffee. Her eyes didn't leave yours. "I'm not trying to tell you anything," she said. "You're trying to tell yourself something. I'm just the messenger." You asked why she was doing this. She tilted her head slightly and considered the question. Because you're ready. Not because you want to be. Because you are. She set down her coffee. She extended her hand across the table. "Mara," she said. "Just Mara." You shook her hand. Her hand was warm and steady. "Every message asks for something in return," she continued. "The question is whether you're willing to pay the price." You asked what price. She didn't answer. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small, worn object. A train ticket, yellowed, ancient, slightly crumpled. She slid it across the table. You picked it up. The destination was faded, but one word was still legible. Platform 7. "Why did you give me this?" you asked. She looked at you. You already had it. She said nothing else. The silence stretched. "There's a train station," she said finally. "You'll know it when you see it. Go there tonight." She stood. She left money on the table, exact change for her coffee. "You're running out of time," she said. She looked at you for a long moment, but you already knew that. The door opened, a gust of wind. The rain intensified briefly, then the door closed. She was gone. You sat there, alone. The jazz music continued. The rain continued. Everything was normal. Nothing felt normal. You looked at the ticket in your hand. Platform 7. You turned it over. The back was blank. The name echoed in your mind. Mara. You left the coffee shop. You walked through the rain. You didn't go home. You found yourself walking toward the train station. You didn't know why. The train station was old. The kind of station that didn't get used much anymore. Not for commuters, not for travelers. Just a relic. A building that existed because no one had bothered to tear it down. You found Platform 7. It was in the oldest part of the station. The sign above it was rusted and faded. The platform was empty. You stood there. The tracks stretched into darkness. No trains were coming. You waited. You looked at the ticket again. The destination was still faded. But now you could read something else. A date. 3 years from now. You put the ticket in your pocket. You went home. The blue envelope arrived the next morning. You saw it before you even opened the door. A blue envelope, sitting on the welcome mat. No return address, no postage, no indication of how it was delivered. Only your name, handwritten in ink that seemed darker than it should be, the exact shade of blue from the transmission. You remembered the warning. Don't open it. You picked up the envelope. The paper felt thick and heavy. It wasn't cheap paper. It was good quality. The kind used for invitations or important correspondence. But there was something else. Something you noticed only when you held it. The paper smelled faintly familiar. Like your grandmother's house. Like the stationery she used to write letters. Like a room you hadn't visited in years. You turned the envelope over. The back had an ornate wax seal, also blue. You remembered the woman's voice. If a blue envelope arrives for you, don't open it. You set the envelope down on the table. You walked away. You came back. You picked it up again. You held it in your hands. You put it in a drawer. You closed the drawer. You walked away again. You opened the drawer. The envelope was still there. Hours passed. You tried to distract yourself. You turned on the television. You read a book. You scrolled through your phone. But the envelope remained in your mind. Days passed. The envelope sat untouched. You saw it every time you opened the drawer. You felt it every time you walked past the table. You dreamed about it at night. You dreamed about the train station, the empty platform, the tracks stretching into darkness, a distant train whistle fading. You dreamed about the ticket, the faded destination, the date, 3 years from now. You dreamed about Mara, her face, her voice. You already had it. Curiosity slowly won. You opened the drawer. You took out the envelope. You broke the seal and opened it carefully, deliberately, slower than necessary. Inside was a single object, a train ticket. You looked at it closely. The same crease in the corner, the same stain along the edge. It was the same ticket. The same ticket. But now the destination was clear. Platform 7. And beneath it, the date was different. The date was today. You stared at the ticket. You stared at the envelope. The ticket from the coffee shop was still in your pocket. You checked. It was there. You pulled out both tickets. They were identical. Same crease, same stain, same faded paper. But one had a date 3 years from now. One had a date today. You set them side by side on the table. You didn't sleep that night. That night, you found yourself back at the train station. You didn't remember going there. You didn't remember leaving your apartment. But you were standing on platform 7, and the wind was blowing through the empty station, and the tracks stretched into darkness. A train whistle sounded, distant, then closer. A train arrived. The doors opened. There was no conductor. There was no one on the train. But you stepped on board. The doors closed. The train began to move. You walked through the train. The cars were empty. But each car was different. In the first car, you saw a room you recognized, your childhood bedroom, a small blue toy on the shelf. You didn't remember it, but you remembered it. In the second car, you saw a moment you had almost forgotten, a conversation you should have had, the words you didn't say. You stood there, watching. In the third car, you saw a choice you made, a path you took, the other path stretching out beside it, dark, uncertain, never taken. In the fourth car, you saw a woman, not Mara, someone else, someone you loved, someone you lost. Someone who said something you should have listened to. In the fifth car, you saw a blue envelope sitting on a table. You reached for it. You opened it. Inside was a single sentence. You already know. You closed the envelope. You left it on the table. You walked to the next car. The train continued. You didn't know how many cars there were. You didn't know how long you walked. But eventually, you reached the last car. Mara was sitting there. She looked at you. Did you find what you were looking for? You didn't answer. Do you understand now? You sat down across from her. The train continued moving through the darkness. The windows showed nothing but blackness. "Why did you give me the ticket?" you asked. She considered the question. "Because some messages arrive whether you're ready or not. Because some truths find you even when you try to hide from them. Because you've always known what you need to do. You just needed someone to help you remember." She reached into her coat and pulled out a small, worn photograph. She placed it on the table between you. You looked at it. It was a photograph of the train station, the same station. But the sign above the entrance was different. It read, "Departures 2. The choice you didn't make." "Why did you warn me?" you asked. "About the envelope?" She looked at you with something that might have been compassion, or recognition, or both. "Because every message asks for something in return," she said. "The envelope asks for your willingness to change. Some people aren't ready." She looked at you directly. You were ready, but that doesn't mean there's no cost. "What's the cost?" you asked. She didn't answer. She looked out the window at the darkness. "The train is approaching the station," she said. "Look at the ticket." You looked at the ticket. The date was still today. "The date hasn't changed," you said. She looked at you. "Are you sure?" You looked at the ticket again. The date was 3 years from now. You looked at Mara. She was watching you with something like sorrow. "Time doesn't work the way you think it does," she said. "Some moments happen more than once. Some choices echo. Some trains never stop running." The train began to slow. The doors opened. "The next car is yours," Mara said. You have to go alone from here. She held your gaze. Don't wait too long. You stood. You walked to the next car. The doors closed behind you. The train began to move again. The next car was different. It was your apartment. You were sitting on the couch. The television was on. Static. The woman was on the screen. She was looking at you. She said, "If a blue envelope arrives for you, don't open it." You watched yourself sit up on the couch. You watched yourself stare at the television. You watched yourself search for the transmission that didn't exist. You watched yourself go to the coffee shop. You watched yourself open the envelope. You watched yourself get on the train. You were watching yourself watch yourself. The train stopped. The doors opened. You stepped off the train. You were standing in a familiar place, the coffee shop. But the neon sign outside was blue. The windows were dark. The door was open. You walked inside. The coffee shop was empty. But on the table where Mara had been sitting was a single object, a blue VHS tape. You picked it up. The label read, Transmission 1, Do Not Watch. You didn't remember leaving the coffee shop. You didn't remember coming home. But you were standing in front of your television. The blue VHS tape was in your hand. You inserted the tape. The television hummed to life. Static. The woman's face appeared on the screen. She looked directly at you. Her voice came through the static, distorted but clear. You opened the envelope. You came to the station. You found what you were looking for. The question is, what you're going to do now. She paused. The train never stops coming. Every choice is a platform. Every moment you wait is a departure you miss. Her face softened. But you already knew that. She smiled. Don't wait too long. The screen went dark. The VCR ejected the tape. You woke the next morning. The room was the same. The rain had stopped. The morning light was pale and gray. You sat up slowly. Your head felt strange, heavy, as if you'd been somewhere else for a very long time. You looked at the nightstand. The blue envelope was still there. The ticket was still inside. A moment of relief. It was real. It was all real. Everything appeared normal. Then you turned the ticket over. For the first time, you noticed writing on the back. Your handwriting. Not similar, not familiar, exact. The precise slant of your letters, the way you dotted your I's, the way you looped your E's. It was unmistakable. It was your writing. And the message read, I told you not to open it. You stared at the ticket. You read the words again. You read them a third time. Then you noticed something even stranger. The date on the ticket. 3 years from now. No, today. You couldn't tell. The date kept shifting. You didn't understand. You couldn't understand. The room felt different now. The morning light seemed harsher. The air felt thicker. You tried to make sense of it. You tried to find a logical explanation. There was none. You picked up the VHS tape, the one from the coffee shop, the one labeled Transmission 1, Do Not Watch. You inserted the tape. The television hummed to life. Static. But this time, something was different. The screen wasn't showing Mara. The screen was showing you. You were sitting in a room you didn't recognize. You were older. Your face was different. Tired. Worn. You looked terrified. You looked directly into the camera, your own voice strained and urgent. Don't open the envelope. I'm begging you. Don't open it. I know you won't listen. I didn't listen. And now. You looked behind you. Something was coming. Your eyes widened with fear. The screen went dark. Static. Through the static, you heard it. Train brakes. A distant, desperate voice. And then another transmission beginning. The same voice, calm and measured. If a blue envelope arrives for you. The screen went dark. The VCR ejected the tape. You stared at the television. You stared at the ticket. Then you noticed something else. On the back of the ticket, below your handwriting, a new message. You read it. Your voice, barely a whisper. You already know. The same words from the card. The same words from the transmission. You didn't understand the cost. You didn't know what you'd lost. But you knew something had changed. Something was different. And you knew the train would come again. You looked at the television. The screen was dark, but you knew it wouldn't stay dark. You looked at the ticket. The date was still shifting. You remembered Mara's words. Don't wait too long. A train whistle sounded, distant, fading. The television stayed dark, but you knew. You knew what was coming. The rain began again, soft, persistent. The jazz piano returned, slow, melancholic.